Well, thank you for coming. I got a great crowd. That's wonderful, I think, or else I'm going to be very nervous. I became a Master Gardener in 2018. Anybody who hasn't become a Master Gardener that would be interested, you just need to get a hold of one of us that has a badge on and talk to us, because I think you'll find out that it's a great way to meet people that have similar values and similar interests. So it's been a real gift to Bill and myself to be in the program. So today, foraging the food at our feet and all around us. I had to add all around us because in the fall to winter, you're not going to find much at your feet because all of that stuff is pretty much gone and we're kind of getting ready to hibernate. And so I went ahead and expanded it a little bit, okay? So I've got a handout. I hope everybody was able to get one. So got my thingy here. So, why forage? You know, back in the old days, that's all people did. There were hunters and gatherers. What do you think a gatherer was? That was a person that went out and foraged, okay? The food I'm going to talk to you about today isn't necessarily going to be, you couldn't sustain yourself unless you really worked hard and really had a lot of property to work with. But it's also important to know that there are things around you. And when we're looking at this, when you forage, it says good for the body. What does that mean? You're getting out, you're walking around, you're stretching, you're lifting, you're just doing all the things, using all of your senses when you go out among the gardens and the land. So it's just good for your body to move. Okay? Good for the mind. Okay? When you're looking for something, it's kind of like the Where's Waldo or the Search and Find puzzles. Maybe you're looking for a specific bloom, so you're looking for a color, or maybe you're looking for the shape of a certain leaf. So just having that, it just makes your mind work, and it gets your mind off of other things that are usually clogging up your brain, okay? At least mine. And then good for the soul. I don't know about you guys, but once I've been outside, as long as I'm not killing myself trying to walk a mile in X amount of minutes, it's good for your soul. It just makes me feel good. It makes me relaxed. It makes me happy. It makes me appreciate all of what God has given us all around us. So those three things alone would be enough to make it worth your while. Okay? But what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what you might be able to bring home with you. Okay? So there are some rules. The first one will be honor the law. Obviously, you don't want to go out and trespass on somebody's property because you see that perfect plant. You can contact that person and ask permission, and you'll probably be granted because they're going to look at you like, whatever, you want that weed? I don't care, pull it up. But you do need to follow the law. There's also certain rules that you have to follow by law. If you go into a state park, for instance, they're kind of picky about what you're gathering and stuff. So you need to know what your rules are before you start gathering. Okay? The other thing is honor the land. So if you decide you want that perfect plant there, and not only do you want it, but you want to take it roots and all, you dig up a big old hole. Well, you're not honoring the land there. You're leaving it worse than when you found it. So hopefully when you leave, you're going to clean up what you're doing behind yourself, okay? If you find the occasional beer bottle or piece of trash, maybe you'll pick that up at the same time, okay? Leave the place prettier than when you arrived. Then honor the plant. So if you have a whole field of, let's just say, dandelions, you can take quite a few leaves off of those dandelions and the flowers, right? And that plant will continue to thrive. If there's only one dandelion plant on that piece of property, you don't want to take all of the leaves off of that plant, or you've killed that plant and you're not going to be able to come back to it. So you need to think about that. You need to honor your plant. I think it's the American ginseng. I don't think we have it around here, but it's actually become extinct because people go out in the forest, they dig it up, and they get X amount of dollars for turning it in. So there are plants out there that are becoming extinct because of being over foraged. So just think about that when you're doing your foraging. And then honor yourself. So when I say honor yourself, think about what you should be putting in your body. And so do you really want to eat that beautiful dandelion that is sitting right next to the highway? Probably not, because of the drainage, because of the runoff. Feedlots is a good example. Think about everything that goes on in a feedlot, and then think about all around the edge where it's got lots of fertility. Do you really want to eat those plants that are right around the feedlot? So honor your body. Think about where that plant is and whether or not that would be good for you. Bill, when he was a kid, they used to go picking dewberries on the railroad tracks. Well, now that you know what creosote does and what drops out of the train when they're driving down the tracks, that might not have been the best place to pick your dewberries. Just saying. So, general safety. You need to protect your body. What does that mean? Well, when you go out there, you can't go. It doesn't matter if it's 110 out there. You can't go out there in shorts. You're gonna expose your legs to brambles. You're gonna expose it to bugs. You're gonna expose it to bites. So put long sleeves on, long pants on, possibly something around your neck, and gloves. Just protect yourself when you're out there. The other thing is to stay aware. We have snakes out here, okay? Don't stick your hands in some place where you can't see where you're sticking it, okay? So just be aware of all of the hazards that can happen. Don't step on a big rock that you don't know whether or not it's steady enough to hold you, okay? So just stay aware. And the other one is, I put go with friends, and I don't know that that's totally important other than it's fun. It also helps in case, you could walk and you could get into a gopher hole and you could snap an ankle or sprain or whatever and you can't get out. We don't have very good phone service out here. So as much fun as it sounds like to just take off for hours in the wilderness, if you're going to do it by yourself, you ought to at least let somebody know where you're going and when you think you might be back. And then hope that they're a good enough friend or family member that will come looking for you if you're not home when you said you would be. All right. So next we're going to talk about your equipment, and these are pretty simple. But you would carry a backpack, and again, depending upon what it is you're looking for. If you're looking for greens, a kitchen scissor knife is a real good option because it's going to cut tiny little leaves and stuff. The other would be if you're doing something a little stronger, just a pruner of some sort is a good thing to have. One of my master gardener friends told me that she doesn't go anywhere in her car without certain equipment. So this kind of fits for foraging too. So I have this cute little shovel that I put in the back of my car, but it fits in this little bag here, and just a couple of shopping bags. All of that is helpful. Now, if you're foraging today and you know for a fact you're not looking for anything that you're going to dig up, this is heavy. There's no sense putting it in your backpack if you're not going to be utilizing it. But this is just something to think about. If like my elderberries that I have in my garden right now, I dug up a little. It was just little stream. What do you call that when they? Runners, thank you. It was just a runner, and I just had to dig it up just a little bit, popped it out, got a few roots, stuck it in the ground, and I think I got about 50 quarts of elderberry juice now. So anyway, so these are not real helpful to have, bags, okay? Then another thing to have is containers. So again, what are you collecting? If you're collecting big bags of things, well then you're going to need a big trash bag. But if you're just collecting small stuff, you can just use these bags that in Austin or you have to pay for. They won't let you take out the free bags. And then you can have these little trash bags all the way up to, obviously full-size big garbage bags. I like to use baggies too. And if you use baggies, I would recommend that when you put your item in, that you label it. Because again, especially if you're just picking leaves off, you might be picking leaves off of several plants that you might not recognize them once you get them home. So if you go ahead and label it, even if you're not sure what it is, at least you have an idea of what it was that you thought you were picking, okay? So, also, as long as you've got these bags, if you've got a bag that's got that's plastic, You can just spray a little, take your spray bottle and just spray a little water in it. Again, it depends upon what time of the year it is as to whether or not it'll be helpful. But your plants are going to start wilting almost immediately. As soon as you take the leaves or the stems off of the mother plant, they're going to start wilting. So again, put a little spray bottle in and then just give them a squirt before you put them in the plastic bag. For yourself, bug spray, lavender oil. I have a roll-on lavender oil that if I get stung by a fire ant, if I put that on me immediately, I do not get blisters. So tip of the day. Your phone. So your phone you're going to use for communications if you're lucky enough to have cell service there. But the other thing you can do is you can take a picture of the mother plant so that you can remember, one, maybe where the mother plant was, two, what the mother plant looked like in case you need to do a plant ID later on because you weren't exactly sure about the leaf. So it's just a good way for you to be able to identify and keep track of what it is that you're foraging. The last thing is you need to have a book, and I've got a couple here. Here's The Idiot's Guide to Foraging, always my favorite. You got Wild Edible Plants of Texas. And then this one is actually looking for medicinal plants, but it has a lot of good identifiers in here, and it uses a lot of this. It goes through a lot of the same food that we consider as food is also can be considered medicine. There's also little plastic fold-outs that you can get at the store that show you some edibles that are around here. You might not, sometimes you have to think of them not as edibles in other people's world. It might be a weed identifier. Well, we all know that it's only a matter of, I think a weed is just a plant that was put in the wrong place, possibly. So just keep that in mind, but you want to look for something preferably that's light, color photos, ones that are well illustrated, and ones that are for this area. If you're looking in a book that covers Canada, you're probably not going to find most of the plants. So again, make sure that you've identified the food before you're going to eat it, or at least before you eat it. You might harvest it and not know for sure, but make sure you've identified it properly before you consume it. Make sure you've washed it thoroughly. And then I've got on there taste test. So my recommendation is just say you're going to put some leaves in a salad, some dandelion leaves in a salad. Just take a little piece off of a dandelion and just chew on it and give yourself 15-20 minutes and see if you have any reaction to it. Because you don't want a huge response. You'd much rather have a small response and know that that might not be the right food for you. And while I'm talking about that, you don't want to get 4 or 5 plants that you've never eaten before, put them all together and eat them all at the same time. Because you could have a reaction to one and not know which one it is. So give yourself a couple of days in between to make sure that you know what plant it is that's bothering you. All right, so now we're going to the plants. Does anybody have any general questions?
What's that thing up there?
Huh? Oh, I guess I can cover that real quick. I told him I was going to move it as soon as I got done. Some of the plants I'm going to talk about, yes?
How about something in there that contains water for hydration? In your backpack?
Oh yes, that would be a good idea unless you want to drink the water you put in your spray bottle. So yeah, it would probably be a good idea. I did have a backup though with the spray bottle. Yeah. I ran across this year. I had not heard of it before, but I was on a Facebook group for elderberries, and it's a juicer steamer. And you put the water in here, and you start it up, and you get it boiling. And then you have this right here, you put next, and that's where the juice is going to flow. You put all of your elderberries or whatever, your grapes or whatever in this, and then there, and then you cover it, and within an hour, you're going to have all of the juice run out here, and you siphon it out into containers. It's very, very hot. Be very careful with it. And this is how you can clarify, you get the solids away from the liquids, okay?
What's that exactly, steamer?
It's called a steamer, steamer it's called a, what did I call it? Steamer juicer. There you go, steamer juicer. So it's not a juicer in that it mangles all it does is but it actually does a really good job of pulling the juices out of the particular berries.
And do you prefer a brand? I'm sure you did research, so what?
I always prefer stainless steel.
Stainless steel.
This was about $75. You know, in the scheme of things, that didn't seem like a whole lot when it takes hours to clean elderberry clusters.
And do you have to muddle or
Nope.
chop up?
Nope. Just wash them, stick them in there. It works great. Yes, Kim?
Okay, so like, we people that make jellies and stuff, would that be a better solution than having to use the cheesecloth and all
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. What do you making, where do you pulling the juice from? Grapes?
I use like grapes or
Yeah.
whatever, but I'm used, it's annoying. You know,
Yes.
because you have to use the t-shirts or the cheesecloth.
Absolutely.
So that would be a better solution, even though it costs money to start off with it.
It saves you a lot of time. It's quite a time saver, absolutely.
That's amazing, I like that.
Yep. This is just a coffee grinder. But for instance, I have the sumac that I'm going to talk about later. You'll put that in here and you grind it up and you can use it as a seasoning. So there'll be times when you need a grinder. I use it for lots of things, and I use it for my dried peppers. The Vitex tree, it's got the seed pods on the end, and you can take those seeds out and you can put them in there and use them as a kind of a pepper substitute. My only recommendation is that you're careful about what it is that you're putting. Obviously, you don't want to grind up a real strong tasting berry, and then, in my case, I have one specifically just for peppers, because your coffee will have a pepper aftertaste no matter what. Yeah, and don't grind. If you've got something like peppers as well, I know we're not talking about peppers today, but don't do it in the house. In fact, don't do it in a enclosed surface, because no matter what, a year later you will touch something and then you'll touch your eye and you'll still have a burning sensation. So those are some potent peppers. All right, how am I sitting on time? We're doing pretty good. All right, we're going to start out with berries, wild berries. Who ever thought hackberries have berries? Besides the name, I didn't think about that. Hackberry trees grow all up and down telephone poles. Anywhere a bird lands, you're going to find a hackberry tree. Okay. Hackberries. This one does not have any. I could not find any this year that had any. This has some galls on here. This is just something that an insect was putting their young in. So these are galls. These are not the berries for the hackberry. But they're brown, reddish brown, put that on my next screen. Voila. So that's this right here. So they're just little round berries. They have a sweet covering. There isn't a whole lot to them, and then they have a pretty good sized seed. The pioneers said that they didn't starve because they had these berries. They would pull the berries, they would take a mortar and pestle and break them into a paste, and then they would cook them, and that was their power bars. Okay, it had proteins, it had fats, it had vitamins. So a lot of people survived because they had the hackberry tree. So next time you curse that trash tree, remember it has value to somebody. The next one is a mulberry, something that nobody wants in their driveway because it stains absolutely everything that it falls on. But it grows, and it'll just have little, again, these little drupals on the stem, and they come out about the same time that your blackberries and dewberries come out. Okay. Your best way to harvest these, because I tell you, I've done it where I put your finger on it, and if it's a ripe one, a ripe berry, all you have to do is touch it, and then it falls on the ground. So your best bet is to put a sheet down and just kind of shake the tree or the branch, and you'll get all your ripe ones will just fall down. Now you'll have to beat the birds, because the birds really love the mulberries as well, because it works well for them, because they even grow on the sturdier stems, the the fruit does. So it's real easy for the birds to harvest.
What about the,
Yes, ma'am?
I've got mulberry trees at the house, and the webworms always get to them. Yeah, you can't even, because they're just like, I mean, weird.
Well, my recommendation is, as soon as you've got, if you can reach to them, is to cut those out as soon as they show up, because they only get worse. They don't go away. So, yeah. The next one is a sumac. This is the one that along the countryside, as soon as it starts getting cooler, is that you'll start seeing these leaves turn bright yellow, orange, red. It's gorgeous. It's just about our only color. I guess it would be our maple tree, okay? And so you'll see them up and down the road. Sweet gums come out pretty nice too, but these can be really nice too. Depends upon how much rain we've had. But their seed pods are up here at the top, and it's a cluster of seed pods, and they call this is called a bob. And I noticed because of our lack of rain, we didn't have many bobs out there. But there's a malic acid that's on these seeds that you can take this seed pod and soak it in cool water overnight, and it will make a lemonade that all you have to do is strain it and then put some sugar in it or whatever and make yourself a lemonade. Once you do that, then you're also going to want to just take these seeds and just kind of do like this and get them out of the little branches, and you can dry these and grind them, and they're used in a lot of Middle Eastern dishes. So this is the sumac berry.
So how do you tell the difference between poison sumac and the good sumac?
Thanks for asking that.
I know.
Was that on the list? Was that on the list?
I don't know.
So I had other people say that to me. They go, well, I've heard that sumac is poisonous. Well, there is a sumac that is poisonous. It's actually, it's usually in the swampy, marshy areas that you have them. They also are usually all by themselves, versus if you find these, you usually find 4 or 5 or 6 of them together in like a little grouping. The big identifier for me, at least during this time of the year, is it has white, odd-shaped berries that are like a blueberry size, instead of having these tiny little berries on the top that we call a bob. And those are toxic to eat. So I would tell you that the only thing that I see that's the same, well, I guess the leaves are similar, but it's also, the fruit doesn't look anything like it, and all you're interested in is the fruit. So if you're just looking for the fruit, you should be fine, because you're always going to be looking for the reddish black bobs. That's my word for the day, Bob.
You said the poison ones were white?
The poison ones are greenish to white.
Okay.
Also, when you break off a limb, it's got white sap.
Okay.
But again, I wouldn't go touching them. I wouldn't go over there and go, wow, I think that's a poisonous sumac, and go break it and play around with it. I would not touch it. Whereas these, I would only go, since I'm not harvesting any leaves off of the sumac. I'm only looking for the fruit. So it'll be very easy to identify, and then I would go in and just cut the bobs. All right, next one, elderberry. This one actually came out of my garden, but it is a wild variety of elderberry. It blooms these beautiful white clusters that are probably about this big in the spring, and they're usually growing in ditches, and they like water. So you might run across them in places that you might not want to harvest, but you at least know where they are. Maybe you could get a cutting off of them, stick them in the ground. They root really pretty easily, and in about 2 years you can have a harvest out of them for the elderberries. These are overripe. I've actually left these for the birds because I'm sharing. Actually, I'm tired of working with them, but anyway. You want them black. I mean, these would be all right for you to use, because they're, to be honest, when you order elderberries from a catalog or from Amazon or whatever, they send them to you in dried form. So this is just like a naturally dried elderberry. It's still got some color to it. But you would use them the same way. Elderberries have seeds that are so tiny, it tastes like you've got sand in your food. You do not want to eat elderberries whole. In fact, if you ate enough, which I don't think you would because you can't stand having sand in your food, but the seeds do have some toxicity to them. So my recommendation is that you get you a juicer steamer and put them in there and get you some wonderful juice. It makes great jellies, jams. I actually use it to make an elderberry syrup, and I've got family members that always plan on getting that for Christmas because that gets them through the flu season. Anyway, that's elderberry. I'm sorry?
So I watched a video on Doug and Stacy, the elderberry guy, and a lot of the ones you buy like from catalogs are European.
Right, this is an
These are
American.
American.
And it has less toxicity in the seeds
Right.
as well.
So
Yeah.
you can find that video and order from that guy. I ordered a bunch of them last year. They come in a little stem in December or whatever. So I guess mine are American. I wanted American, so that's what it would look like.
Right.
Okay.
And you can make a wonderful tea out of just the flowers too. Now I never want to sacrifice the flowers because I want the berries. Obviously you can't have both. But you can take some of the flowers and makes a nice, real delicate tea. And again, you can buy dried elderberry flower. So there's people that like it so much they buy it off
And
the
do you
line.
prune yours? Do you cut them back? How
Right.
much do you cut 'em
In the
back?
spring, I cut them. You can cut them down to like 2 feet.
In the spring? Like it-
Yeah, you got to catch it pretty quick because they are one of the first ones to start putting out leaves. So
like January is when
yeah, you could even do January. All right, the next one is, this is a kind of a sad representation, but this is a dewberry limb. You know it's a dewberry, it's got tiny little thorns all up and down it. It makes a smaller, keep me on track if I don't move it. So it makes a much smaller, it's probably about half the size of a mulberry. I would say it's probably half the size of the average blackberry. So it's a lot more work. And it's also down on the ground. That always kind of makes me nervous when I have to dig around in the ground. So a hoe might be appropriate to take along with your backpack. But it makes a very flavorful pies, jellies, jams. And again, those can be frozen. You can juice them. You can eat. The seeds are not that, they're just like a blackberry seed. So they're not that bad. They're not like sand in your food. So.
But you have to get those before the county agent knows the ditches.
So the next one I've got is beauty berry, also called several things. American beauty berry. Maybe I've heard people call them deer berry.
You want to dance?
Oh, thank you. There we go, right there. You wait till this is just about the right time. You could actually maybe even wait a little bit longer. You want them dark magenta before you pick them. And obviously they're very easy to harvest. You just pull them off. And again, juicer steamer, because the berry itself I find kind of mealy and doesn't have much taste. Do you feel that way, Michelle? But it makes a real light and delicate jelly. It's pretty, it's kind of cool, to give to your friends. I got some beauty berry jelly, for Christmas. But the flavor that the author that was talking to, he said it was like a cross between champagne and rose together. So it's going to be a very light flavor. I've always felt like it's mostly sugar, flavored sugar, right? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so like the beautyberry, there's an imposter out there that looks like beautyberry. It's the pokeberry.
Right.
Oh yes, okay, good idea. You do not want a pokeberry, so you want to find one that have these clusters like this. I mean, I think that's pretty unique
They're on
looking.
the stem.
Yes, it's very unique. Whereas the pokeberry, the fruit is coming out at the top, and it's more like, it looks almost like a grape cluster in the way that the blackberries are connected. And bigger. Yeah, it's bigger too. So some people have thought that those were elderberry before. I've had people think that pokeberry, and I've only listed, this is just a small handful of all of the things that are actually edible around here. I tried to list things that were very safe, very non-toxic. The poke, you can actually boil the leaves like twice or something. I'm like, anything that's that toxic, I just as soon not touch. And if I'm gonna eat it, I'll feed it to Bill first and wait 20 minutes. Anyway, this makes a nice little jelly, but like I said, it's more of a, I think it's just kind of unique. Just, there aren't a whole lot of people, I mean, nurseries sell these plants, and we've got them just growing wild all around us.
Teresa,
Yes,
the leaves on those plants are also a natural bug repellent. If you're out, you can just grab a leaf and rub it on you, and the mosquitoes will not come near you.
Absolutely.
There's no smell on you, but the mosquitoes won't come near you.
yeah. Well, I take them and I just crush them in my hand first, and then I just rub them on me. Bill puts them in his hat, whatever you want to do, but yeah, we look like, well, we won't take one. The next one is the Mustang grape. I'm sure all of y'all have seen the Mustang grape around. It's got a big green, this ones are kind of small. They're gonna have all kinds of different size leaves and maybe even look a little different. But the characteristic that you can know on a Mustang grape is it's got a white or a gray back to it. Kind of fuzzy a little bit. You want to harvest the grapes when they're purple. They're one of the first grapes that comes out in the spring. A lot of times they'll have even a yeast on them, so it's got like a little white covering on it, and that's just natural yeast. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not like it's going bad. But you need to remember to wear gloves because that yeast or acid kind of is irritating. So if you're going through and picking a lot of these, it's best if you're just wearing gloves when you're working. And really, as far as I'm concerned, if you're foraging, you should be wearing gloves. Okay?
Put that in your backpack.
I'm sorry? In your backpack. I actually have the gloves. I just didn't mention them. All right. Muscadine grape. So this grape, oh, I didn't mention, those grapes, the Mustang grape, they've got thick skins and they're very tart. They're certainly not a table grape, but you wouldn't want to just pop one in your mouth when you're collecting them like you can do it with the blackberries at the Huebner's place. If you do that, the acid can actually irritate your mouth for one. Two, you're gonna pucker up big time.
Cutthroats, that's what,
What do you call it?
are they the same thing as the cutthroat grapes?
Uh-huh, yep. So you'd be your Mustang grapes, yeah. The muscadine are much more flavorful. They're not as tart, they're not as acidic, and but they are kind of gelatinous inside, and the skins are a little chewy. So it's not like what we're used to getting out of the produce section of the grocery store. So again, most people prefer to go ahead and juice these babies instead of eating them raw, but they can be eaten raw. You won't suffer any consequences. You can even swallow the seeds. Back in my day, I was told if you swallow them, they grow in your stomach. That doesn't happen. A watermelon, yeah. The next one is the ground cherry. That's not a super great picture of the ground cherry, but it looks like a tomatillo. If you know what a tomatillo looks like, it's got the little lantern globe over it, and when these are ready to be harvested, they've actually already fallen onto the ground. So you're going to be picking these up off the ground, and they're kind of a cross between a salsa, between a savory and a sweet. Are you giving me a look, Michelle? Have you tried these?
No, I can't eradicate them once they get started. They're horrible.
So Michelle has free ground cherries for anybody who's interested. I have not used them before. I don't have them in my yard.
Oh, I stupidly bought, seeds for them once.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I now have way too many.
So the next one we're going to talk about is nuts. So I was at a picnic this past weekend, and somebody had one of these, and they just dropped on, and you're going, what was that? And these are your black walnuts. We had a pretty decent year. In fact, right now, if you look around, your leaves are falling off before the walnuts are even ready to come down. But they've got this hard shell that then gets kind of black like this, and then this is more or less the nut inside the husk. That again is hard. You have to use a hammer. We had read that you could drive over them, so this morning Bill drove over one. This would definitely be called walnut pieces. You'd have to pick through that. But even if you break this with a hammer or with a real strong nutcracker, you're going to need to pick it. It takes work. However, it's very flavorful. A lot of people, it's got a unique flavor. It's stronger tasting than an English walnut. But you've got all the fats, all the nutrients. That it's a very nutrient dense nut. And if you're putting it in a recipe that calls for, say, a cup of walnuts, you would just put a half a cup of these walnuts to equal as far as the flavor. Also, you'll notice when you are looking at the hillside or the landscape, black walnut trees will typically not have a whole lot of underbrush underneath them because their leaves and their husks and everything, they give off a slight toxic chemical to protect their territory. So you don't want to put those in your compost pile, okay? So just remember that. Those are not things that you want to put in your compost pile. The next one is hickory. We have a number of different hickory trees. There's a picture of one in our area. Not all of them are worth eating. All of them going to have the good fats in them and everything, but some of them just aren't as flavorful as others. So, for instance, the shag bark one, which I've looked at the barks and I don't see a whole lot of difference in them, but it's called a shag bark. It's got more of a rounder nut, and it is supposed to be one of the more flavorful ones. And then you have your water hickories, which I've got a couple of those too. And it's got more of almost like a pecan shape, a little more oval. Y'all can come up later and take a look at them. But again, just try the nuts off of a specific tree and see if they work. Again, very hard. I've got a piece broken where you can see you're not going to have a whole lot of meat in there, and you're going to have to pick it out. You're not going to get halves when you're breaking these. These are going to be pieces again. Pecans. Pecans are actually a relatively new crop for the United States as far as age. I mean, walnuts came first, but pecans were, because they were mostly New Mexico, Texas, it makes sense. You know, that was what, if you think about as everyone came into the United States. But your natives are going to be small, but they seem to have more flavor. I don't know if it's just because it seems like it's harder work to get them out, so tiny is full of deliciousness, whatever. It's got a hard shell. They've been hybridizing to the point where they're making paper shell pecans, as y'all know. There's grafting that they do, but your natives are going to have a pretty hard shell. In fact, the native Indians, the name they gave for pecans translates to hard as a stone. All of these ripen in the fall. They're good raw or cooked, any of these. Next I'm going into greens. Look at that, I remember. The first one is a chickweed. This is kind of a sort of misleading. I don't have greens because these are things that usually come out early spring. Chickens absolutely love this. This is why I always I remember chickweed because my chicks love this chickweed. But it's a low growing, like a clover kind of as far as growing habits. It's low growing. It just screams spring. Yeah, and it's got a nice light citrusy taste to it. You can toss it in with your salads. Again, best eaten raw. If you try to cook it, it's just going to mush out. You could also throw it into smoothies if you're a big smoothie fan. You can throw any of these greens in your smoothies. The next one is your bastard cabbage. I really wasn't sure whether or not I was going to put that one in because it's invasive for one, and it's actually from Europe. It's not a native. It thinks it's a native now, but it has if you got to have one around, you might as well access it and utilize it, right? So the heads on that, before it blooms, look almost like a broccoli flowerette. You can cut those off and you can eat them raw, or you can stir fry them in a stir fry, saute them. But however, the flowers and the leaves are both edible. The whole plant is edible. Obviously, mustard, it's going to have a mustardy taste to it. It's going to be kind of peppery. The next one is your dandelion, which I pulled this one up because it was in one of my raised beds this morning. There's a false dandelion that you want to make sure you're not getting the false dandelion. So this is a true dandelion, and the leaves and the root and the flower are all edible, but they're also bitter. You know, our American diet has gotten to the point where we like sweet, 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 and more sweet. Our bodies need bitter. Like Bill's got a new motto: bitter is better. So again, if you know you have a tolerance to the dandelion, you would go and pull just the tiniest little, most tender leaves, and you could put that in your salad. I wouldn't put a bunch of it in your salad. It's like eating arugula in your salad, okay? But it's good to have a little bitter to offset some of the sweet we have in our life.
What's the difference in the false?
It's just, it's a completely different plant. They call it false. I can't remember. I think it's called sal. I don't remember what the name of that particular one is. No. These are very toothy leaves. I'm sorry? Yes. Yeah.
And it blooms also, the false?
Yes, the false.
Yellow also?
All yellow, but it's got black lines in the flower. The false one does. I've also noticed that these babies only open up when the sun is out. So if it's a cloudy day and you're going out to go collect dandelion flowers, you're not going to find any because they're all closed up like this one. So I like to take the dandelion flowers off and I put them in honey and I infuse honey with dandelion. I don't think it does much difference for the taste, but the dandelion has a lot of good properties, so I just like to put it in there. But if you do that, you want to take it off the green. So you don't want to have any green in it because the green can give it a bitter flavor. Back in the day, the dandelion root has actually been used, roasted, and used as a coffee substitute. So I've never tried that. The next one is the dollar weed. I'm sure there's been many people that have cursed that in their yard. But if you see a dollar weed, it's usually just almost looks like baby lily pads in your yard. Those are good, again, throw in your salad, and they're very bland, very green flavored, and it offsets that bitterness of the dandelion. You can make a sauerkraut with it. You can, let's see, I've got something else in there that you can do. Oh yeah, you can put it in the smoothie. Remember, all greens can go in smoothies. Do any of y'all make smoothies? We used to make smoothies all the time. And my mom was like, oh, I hope I'm not there when they're making their smoothies. She never knew what might be in them either, right? The dollar weed is around almost year round. You can ferment it, like I said, in sauerkraut or kimchi. And it's just again, if you can't beat it, join it, right? So if it's bothering you, then just harvest it. The next one I've got is called the shepherd's purse. Oh, I got them out of line a little bit. Maybe it's on my page here.
Shepherd's purse.
Okay. Henbit. Henbit's next. Henbit, again, comes in the spring to summer, right there. It's got those little purple, odd-looking flowers. And it's actually a mint. Anyone who knows about the mint family, if you take the stalk of a mint family, it's got a hollow, squared stem, and so it's in the mint family, but it's not as strong as you would find a peppermint or spearmint. It's good for you to use for seasonings with your cooking, and you want a little of that mint flavor in whatever you're cooking. You can throw those in there. Again, it's good. Any of it can be eaten. The leaves, the stems, the flowers are all edible. I put it raw in salads. Interesting conversation piece for your salad, right? The next one is the shepherd's purse, and in particular, I've not eaten anything on the shepherd's purse except these tiny little things right up there. And those are the seed pods, believe it or not, even though they're flat, that's where their little seeds are located. And if you pick that little piece and put it in your mouth, it's like putting a little pepper in your mouth. And so it could actually, if you put those in your salad again, it would just give it a lot more character and flavor. Let's see what else I've got here. Again, found year-round. It's a little bit harder to find because it's a real delicate-looking little plant. So you have to really be looking for it. Again, that where that awareness comes in, where you have to actually, when you search for this and you find it, you get excited because you found your. There's another product called peppergrass. They call it peppergrass. It looks real similar to this. It doesn't have quite the same flower on the top, but it's used exactly the same way. It's not toxic either. So if you accidentally get your peppergrass mixed up with your shepherd's purse, it's not a big deal because they're both used the same way. Let's see, purslane. I have some purslane here. It's very sad because it's the end of the growing season. People have actually taken these hard stems and pickled them. I've never done that. But you can take the edges here. When I'm out in the garden and I have one growing, besides the fact that our chickens love it, you could just take off a piece and just munch on it. It's got a kind of a lemony flavor to it. It's somewhat gelatinous. That sounds like a bad word, but it's not. I mean, it's got a nice flavor. Guess what? It can be put in smoothies. It can also be sautéed, and people all over the world have this, but they call it by different names. But they get excited when they see it in another country, and so there's a lot of dishes that are made using the purslane. Okay, lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarters are this leafy one right here. And that one I find hard to identify because I have a lot of leafy stuff like ragweed growing in my fields. But one of the things that makes it identifiable is right where the stem attaches to the branch. You've got like a purple coloring. You can't. It's not in that picture, but you have a little purple stain that attaches to it that makes you realize that is actually the lamb's quarters. There's a lot more out there than I think we realize. I think that I walk past this particular plant and don't realize what it is. Again, it can be eaten raw, but most people like it cooked, so it's more like a spinach as far as cooking it. And the only look-alike it was talking about was your silver leaf nightshade. And I happen to have that. I know what that looks like, but I can't imagine the leaf itself, the shape looks the same, but the nightshade has little thorny pieces underneath it, and it has those purple flowers that come up the top. So to me, I don't think it looks anything like the lamb's quarters. But again, maybe if you were looking at just the leaf, you might think that that's a match. Okay? You would also look at that nightshade and go, I'm not putting that in my mouth.
And doesn't it also have like a little white powdery thing right in the center of the top?
Well, it certainly looks like it does, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Yeah. Where your new growth is.
Does it have
It's just a little fuzzy. It has a little fuzz to it. I haven't noticed a flower, but when I say fuzz, not fuzzy like a dandelion fuzz, but just a softness to it, kind of like a lamb's ear if you're familiar with lamb's ear. It's also called goosefoot and pigweed. So you might find a farmer out there that tells you, yeah, I got a whole pasture full of pigweed, and you're like, okay, whatever, and that would be your lamb's quarters.
I noticed the nightshade used to grow a lot up in Utah. We would compete with it, I think, periwinkle ground cover. And the way I could tell it from out in my front yard was one of them has alternate leaves, and the other one, the leaves are right together.
So I think this is alternate leaves, to believe. So I'm going to have to hurry up, I'm a little slow. Loquats, you guys are from Houston. Do y'all have a lot of loquat trees in Houston? I have read that you do. Again, did you know it had edible fruit? So that's the loquat is an edible fruit. That's your Mexican plum right there, or they call it wild plum. You hear people call it wild plum. The thing with the wild plums is you never know if it's going to be tasty or not. So before you harvest the whole tree, you might just try tasting one before you pick it, because it just has to do with a lot of different factors, environmental factors, as well as that particular tree. The prickly pear, we're going to start seeing them turn purple. Right now they're still green. I ran across another name, a glochid. That's my second word, but Bob is so much cuter than glochid. Glochids are those tiny little hairy like thorns that get on here that when you get in your fingers you can't find them. So take some tongs and hold these over a flame and kind of burn off those stickly things, and then stick it in your juicer steamer, right? But anyway, it makes a nice juice when you juice it. Obviously the plums, you can do anything that you normally do with regular plums. This right here is the redbud tree. Obviously it's the first thing that comes out. It always lets me know spring is here. And it comes out even before, the blooms come out even before the leaves. This is the leaves in the fall, and these are the seed pods in the fall. After the blooms, which are just fine to eat, and they make pretty plates and pretty salads. After them comes the pretty purple seed pods, and when they're nice and small and tender, you can saute them, use them in stir fries. Okay? So it's, let's see, what else do I got here? The next one is crimson clover. Again, I don't think that that's a native, but I don't know if y'all have noticed that a lot of our farmers plant it as a crop or cover crop, and they've kind of spread out all over. So the crimson clover, it's a beautiful plant for one, but you can take those tops and you can either use them fresh for tea or you can dry them and make a tea with them. The next one is the pink primrose, not a buttercup, pink primrose. And the pink primrose flowers in the spring to the summer. You eat the flowers raw, and I got excited. It said that it contains vitamin F. I had to look up vitamin F. Now I thought I knew vitamins, but I never heard of vitamin F. And that's actually your essential fatty acids, the ALA and the LA. Sounds good to me. I think everyone ought to go out and pick themselves a couple of evening primroses and go for it. I have 2 Turk's caps in my front yard, and so I've noticed I've labeled it, even though I think I would know this was a Turk's cap. The flowers are high in antioxidants. They can be eaten raw. I've also seen them put on something that was lightly cooked, and they just had it decorated on the top. But they're going to break down pretty fast when they're cooked. They have a light taste, and if anybody wants to come up and try one after the class, I brought some extras. So Bill doesn't have to eat them all for lunch. Yes.
The pink primrose, is that what we call buttercup?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But that's not what it is. It's a pink.
That's what we call it.
Wild violet. I've run across these in my yard, or down in, not in my yard, but in my land. And they're beautiful. It's just all of a sudden you find them and they show up. Now they make a great drink. You can make a tea with them, dried or fresh. But I've never had that many that I'm able to do anything with them other than just go, oh wow, it's a violet. So I guess if you found a patch of them, that would be different. But I always just try to leave them alone and just admire them. Next is our leaves. Yopon. So I've got a yopon here. Everyone probably knows what a yopon is. I came from Austin, and people pay big bucks for yopons, just saying. This one still has the green berries on it, but the berries will turn red. I wanted to bring it to show you, you do not eat the berries, okay? It's only the leaves. The leaves have they have caffeine in them. So the Indians used to use this as a drink. I looked it up and it said you can dry them naturally, and when you use them for a tea, it kind of tastes like a green tea. But then you can take those dried leaves and roast them. So I roasted some, and I thought that you could come up and smell it. To me, I think it smells a lot like a tea. And then if you even roast them even harder, obviously you get to the point where you then burn them, but if you get them brown enough, they actually make more like a coffee flavor, but again, naturally caffeinated. So if we get to the point where, you know, we have a tea embargo or a coffee problem, we're all going to be roasting yopongans. Also a good anti-inflammatory. See, there's something good in a yopon.
It's everywhere.
And my goats love it. Michelle right here actually makes a tea out of that, and so here she has packaged it into a package, and she's got it with cloves, orange peel, nutmeg, cinnamon chips, cardamom, and stevia. Very tasty. All right, let's see. The pine tree. So I've got mostly loblolly in my yard, in my land. And this is the loblolly. I think it's a 3 to 5. This is a three leaf cluster. And there's several things you can do with it. Believe it or not, it's very high in vitamin C. If we get to the point where we have a horrible freeze again and we don't have any orange juice, you can get your vitamin C out of these pine needles. So you would want to harvest young pine needles, and you just cut them up in little pieces so that they break, that you can absorb more of it. And you pour not boiling water. Boiling water will tend to make it bring out the resin. So you want to just pour warm, hot water on top of it and let them steep for about 5 minutes. I did that the other day. It made a real light tasting. It had a pine smell, but it really didn't have a whole lot of taste to it. But if I'm getting my vitamin C, that's really what I was looking for. Obviously, if you soaked them longer, you could probably get a much stronger taste than what I got. You can also dice them up and put them in vinegar, and then let that vinegar set for a couple of weeks, and you get a flavor similar to balsamic vinegar. So again, different pine types are going to give you different flavors. So if you've got several different kinds of pines on your property, try that one over there, try that one over there. Always good to keep good notes, and maybe you find one that you really like a lot more than one of the others.
But all pines the leaves are all edible.
Yeah, you don't.
Not edible, but.
Right, yes, they're non-toxic.
Non-toxic, that's fascinating.
The next one I've got is the purple sage, and the only reason why I put the purple sage up there is because it's native to Texas, it's just not native around here. So anybody who's got a purple sage around here probably bought it from a nursery or drug it from somewhere else. I was in Austin a couple weeks ago, and it had just rained, and all of the highways were just covered in purple. It was absolutely beautiful. So I had no idea that it's called the state native shrub of Texas. Didn't know that. But if you're interested, the leaves have a lot of vitamin A and C, and you dry them and use them in a tea. I do not know what it tastes like. The last one I want to go on is the sassafras, which I just think has the coolest little leaves. I think they look like hands waving. And in the fall, they turn colors. Now, the leaves can be harvested. I think you've probably heard some stories about sassafras, and now in the roots. And so the leaves don't have toxicity, but the roots, they have a certain chemical that they've discovered that if you drink it every day for 6 weeks or whatever, or 6 months, that it can cause a toxic buildup. So I didn't go after the roots. I'm not looking for the roots, but the leaves, in the spring you can pull the leaves and dry them and then grind them in your coffee filter into a powder, and it will actually, it's Philly gumbo. It's the Philly powder that you put in your gumbo. Okay? Again, a cheap little thing you can make for Christmas, right? Except it'll have to be next Christmas, because you need to harvest the leaves when they look a little bit better than this. The leaves do turn a color too, orange and yellow, so they are pretty tree. You'll start noticing them after you if you start thinking about it, you'll start seeing these little hands that are different colors up and down the highway. I think that's about it. I tried to, right 2 minutes over. Unless anybody has any questions, I'll stay up here. Yeah. Do you want to come look at some of these books?